Lewis, as always, thanks for joining me and talking to me. JD and I, unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight, but we're doing a documentary on the rise in crime in Santa Fe. You've been a police officer in Santa Fe pretty much your whole adult life. What's your opinion about things? Because, talking to, people who are business owners, just regular people out that live in the city, when they've reached out to me, to have something to say, it seems like they're all saying the same thing. It seems like they're all saying, and it's hard to pinpoint a time frame, but maybe the last 3 to 4 years especially, we've just seen a huge uptick in crime. What's your overall opinion about that?
It's getting worse and worse. Our small town has its problems, manageable problems. Unfortunately, because of our current criminal justice system, the lack of drive from law enforcement and this revolving door when it comes to the same offenders over and over and over again. It's getting out of control, Eli. We have to do something about it. And what I suggest is that we hold those that are in charge accountable for it. A lot of my close friends and family, even myself, been victimized by crime after my retirement. It's getting out of control.
Yeah. What do you think about the crime stats that the police department and the city put out? Obviously there's a benefit to reporting those to the feds. Do you think we can rely on the numbers that they're giving us?
No, they're underreported. They are being underreported. As a matter of fact, there were some articles in our local newspapers about statistics being underreported. It's not doing us, the citizens, of any favors. I understand that we are a tourist town. I understand that that's probably our cash cow when it comes to GRTs, the gross receipt taxes, but it's being underreported. Everything has to be reported to the federal government. Everything has to, go through New Mexico State, the Department of Public Safety, and it goes to the federal database. The numbers are skewed. It's not an accurate account of events that's happening here in town.
Yeah. I guess there's benefit to maybe telling those numbers a little bit on the lean side, of course, because, people in charge don't want to look bad. When you were an officer, did you have any experience or interaction with the cartel?
Oh yeah, I did, and let me just say something else on that. On the last question, it was, the only benefit is a political benefit to those numbers. It's just politics. I did have a lot of interaction with the cartel. I worked undercover narcotics for 3 years, and we would work operations involving the cartel from Mexico with the drug sales and drug trafficking here in town. And it always had some sort of nexus to human trafficking as well. So yeah, I do have some experience with dealings with the cartel when I was still working as a police officer.
Yeah, and you actually mentioned something that I was going to ask you about. Human trafficking seems like such a horrible thing to even think about. People being used as a commodity. Mm-hmm. I think there's a disconnect between regular citizens living their lives and the knowledge that this is happening here, mm-hmm. that this is happening in our home, in our Santa Fe. What's your sense of how severe this is?
It's pretty severe. We would do operations, whether it be, buying drugs or or sending in informants or unwittings to do a drug transaction. And we would be posted in public places here in town, grocery stores, where hardware stores, just about anywhere, even auto parts stores here in town. And me working undercover, and just getting ready to buy ounces of cocaine or tar heroin, and people didn't realize what was going on. I'm in this undercover vehicle, and I'm waiting for the suspect to show up, and I see people going about their days with their families, their children, running into the grocery store, running into a shopping mall, running into an auto parts store. And here I am, with a team ready to protect me. I'm armed, I'm ready to protect myself. And all this is going on while this drug transaction's happening. There was one time where we talked about human trafficking. We were working this huge operation. Huge. It is actually labeled, the first operation was labeled, 1, and then we did another operation that we labeled 2 because it was so big, and it involved trafficking of heroin coming in from Mexico. And the suspect, muling, trafficking the drug, had a lady that, wasn't involved. Her job was to pretend that she was his wife, to sort of look like a couple traveling. And at the end, we ended up, I worked that case, and at the end, we ended up seizing 10 ounces of heroin. So it happens. And we got to interviewing her. She just said she wanted nothing to do with this. She told us her story. There's a nexus between the drug world and human trafficking. Huge nexus.
Wow. It seems like not just here in Santa Fe, but it seems like across the country, things like this are just kind of on the downward spiral. What do you say to that person who would respond to what you're saying and this knowledge of what's happening in our community and say something to you like, this is happening all over the country, this is just kind of maybe the new normal, or just the way it is now? What's your reaction to someone who would say something like that?
That's a cop-out. Yes, it happens everywhere. Absolutely. We have a major thoroughfare going through town. We have I-25. It's a conduit from the southern border all the way up to wherever the drugs need to go. And having somebody say that is a proverbial cop-out, because it doesn't make it right. At the end of that trail, wherever those drugs are going, whether it be heroin, whether it be fentanyl, whatever, cocaine, meth, there's always the end user. There's always somebody at the end of that that transaction, that trafficking. And it's our families. It's our children. It is our moms, our dads, our parents. That is the platform of why the drug world is so prevalent in this state, in this country. And taking a position of it's just another part of life, well, it's a cop-out. I have to admit, working in undercover narcotics, the drug war it doesn't work. We were tasked over and over again, Eli, to deal with the middle to the upper echelon when it comes to drug world. And we would forget about the bottom user. Well, that's what's failing our society. Because again, it's our children. I've been through 2 of my 8 kids that suffer from some sort of addiction. I have one now that I'm trying to help. My other one, much better. But this one, it's been going on for about a decade with them.
Yeah.
So there's always an end user. Yeah, we could deal with the mid-level and the upper-level drug dealers and turn a blind eye to the end user, the low-level street dealers, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But there's always a foundation to the need, and it's our families. It's our children.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to me, and I obviously don't know firsthand, but I've been told by users just how addictive some of these substances are, and especially some of the newer iterations of them.
Oh, yeah.
Drugs today are not what drugs were in the 60s.
No.
And I've heard how, one time, 2 times, and you can get hooked. It just seems like such a tragedy that those substances are so available.
Right.
So easy to get.
Yes.
JD and I looking around our town and just kind of doing a little poking around. I mean, I could take you to several places where they're dealing right now. Mm-hmm. And it is frustrating that they just stay there.
Right.
And I think it begs the question, why aren't we doing more? Why aren't we doing more?
The dangers of our current drugs, it is so out of control right now. It is so out of control. You're right. The days of me buying kilos of marijuana back in the day when they weren't, marijuana was still considered illegal in the state. So that was sort of the segue into heavier drugs that's what it was taught. Now we're just starting at the top in the middle and just getting out of control. I was making a delivery, to one of our local homeless shelters, and I was exposed to fentanyl. This young man and this girl wanted to talk with me, right after I made the delivery, and the girl behind him was smoking fentanyl, and she vaped me twice. And I told my partner, I said, hey, I just got exposed to fentanyl. And as we're driving down the road up Cerrillos to make the other delivery, it started to affect me. And thankfully, he has Narcan. He's a volunteer firefighter. I have Narcan. He had it in the center console. And I told him, break it out, because I'm fading. Wow. And I literally saw my world just shrink. The light started to get dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. And what happened was, after all, I had to take, some Narcan. Take some Narcan in my nostril, and I remember fading out. I was out. And then I remember coming to and taking a deep, snorting breath. All this was happening while we're trying to drive, and he's trying to pull over. And then afterwards, I went through the standard issue symptoms of the exposure. We went back to the location and we spoke to the management, and I found the person, the people, the two that couple that were smoking it and vape me, and I just couldn't be mad at them. I just couldn't. I was mad when I took that snorting breath, that agonal breath. But by the time I got there and I saw them, I just couldn't be mad at them. And my conversation was, if you're going to do this to yourself, because I could sit here and tell you not to, but if you're going to do this to yourself, man, go somewhere else. Yeah. I have nothing to do with your drug usage, but yet here I am, and I told him I had to be Narcan to come back. And after that, my partner was just watching and, minding me. There was no need for me to go to the hospital. I know what they're going to do.
Right.
Okay. So it's out of control. Yeah. It is bad. And we just, and you mentioned about going anywhere in town, and you could tell me and show me places where there are drug deals going on. Okay. I've seen it too. I'm in the parking lot of, a hardware store, and I see it. I worked it. And remember, I spoke about me just being in public places and doing the same. Well, it still continues. You know, when I retired, it doesn't mean that I took it with me. It just means that somebody else is in charge of it now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, that's a super powerful story. I don't even know what to do I wouldn't even know what to do if someone did that to me. Not just drug use, of course, but petty crimes. Car break-ins, shoplifting. My neighborhood has been plagued with. I believe that it's multiple individuals, and they go house to house checking cars every night. If you're lucky, you don't have anything broken. If you forgot to lock your car or something like that, they're gonna rummage through it. Sure. Then break-ins, car thefts. I shouldn't say it seems. We know that this is just on the sharp rise.
Right. Those types of crimes, they're opportunistic crimes, right? If they see the opportunity, they're going to take it. Mm. And one way that these entities, the government, can help is by removing that temptation. Close patrols. Have the officers have them go and just cruise the neighborhoods. Heck, turn on the lights, cruise around. See, that's deterrent. That will deter somebody from having that opportunity. Mm-hmm. I understand, I get it. There are about, especially here in the Santa Fe Police Department, there are about 22 positions in the red. I get it. Okay. But if you do the math like I did as an administrator, well, there's salary cost savings from not paying those 22 people. You could take that money and do special operations, right? It's not costing the city any more money out of the coffers. We're just recycling and repurposing that budget, that money. Have nightly patrols and just do that, not calls for service. Mm-hmm. Not, that routine, that mundane routine of looking in the computer and saying, this person needs this person needs that. Now, I'm talking about creating, some overtime opportunities for some of these officers to work and just patrol. Just do indiscriminate patrols, become highly visible, wave at us, right? The constituents, the taxpayers wave at us. So that way they can say, okay, yeah, I like the fact that there's a cop cruising down my street. Okay? Yeah. There's methods. There's all kinds of methods. We have to get away. Law enforcement has to get away from the reactive control model. They have to. Because then it's just the standard definition of insanity. Mm-hmm. Right? Nothing's going to change if their methodology does not change.
Yeah.
Okay. The days of, again, just coming to work, go to briefing, see how many calls are stacked for service and they're prioritized.
Yeah.
And then you go and you handle this call, you go handle, shoplifting, whatever.
I guess an example of being reactive would be, answering calls when you can, and in your downtime, maybe you're not really engaged, you're waiting for the next call.
Sure.
I mean, and I've never been a police officer, but when I hear you say reactive, the opposite of that is being proactive.
Yes.
So what would that look like? And when you were in charge of the police department, what did that look like day to day under your authority?
There is a need for the reactive model. Absolutely. Because people need a police officer for whatever's going on in their life. Again, it could be a burglary, it could be a shoplifting, it could be a theft, it could be a domestic issue, it could be something that they need immediate attention to. And it's usually something after the fact. That's the operative word, after the fact, after the crime has been committed. So the officer reacts and responds to that need, and they deal with it. With that, well, again, those are tax dollars. Then there's that time where if the report needs to be drafted, then they have to spend time writing that report, right? And then after that, the report goes and it gets sent off, and there's a review process and all that time back and forth. That's the reactive model. Okay, I understand it. I worked it. I did it. I managed it, and I supervised it. But it takes thinking outside that proverbial box that show up, go to call, and go home.
Okay, so what does the proactive model look like in contrast? I mean, I guess you need a little bit of both, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what's the proactive side of that you think? And I understand you have a lot of friends that are officers. And,
I do.
And you have, a lot of people that you care about that are officers. So I'm not asking you to dog them or what they're doing, but just what would you do differently? What does the proactive side look like to you, or what did it look like when you were there?
When I managed a patrol team, an entire patrol team, they're divided into different times, different teams. Okay, this is when I was a lieutenant managing. Even further back, when I was a sergeant supervising a unit, I would task some of these guys to, hey, you know what? Go cruise around the shopping centers. Okay, you have a couple of hours. You don't have to respond to calls. Just go. Go challenge people. If you see any suspicious activity, challenge it. Do your job. When we were working on the banners for the Hometown Heroes program, we had to do it at night because of traffic, and we had to plot them where they are. Okay, and it was again another volunteer, a veteran volunteer, and we're cruising and we're driving and we're stopping in the middle of the road, and we have our hazards on, and 3 different police officers cruised by us. Not one of them stopped and checked to see what we were doing. And that's what we were kind of looking for, right? Is that challenge. Hey, sir, how you doing? I see that you're going from, curb to curb to curb to curb. Is everything okay? And then they would have known, this is what we're doing. They would just cruise by, right, with their windows rolled up. And some of them wouldn't even look at us. And we were purposely looking at them because we wanted that engagement. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's a part of it, right? And what about, getting out, walking neighborhoods, getting out and, making themselves visible at a local hardware store.
Yeah. That
goes through a lot of theft, a lot of loss. And ultimately, we as consumer pays for those losses. The prices keep going up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There was a time where I went to a local hardware store, and I'm watching this couple. My intuition was correct. They loaded a shopping cart full of merchandise and they tried to walk out the door, and they did. The employees did nothing. They can't. I get it. It's a civil liability. But I was fed up with it. I'm still fed up with it. And I challenged them.
So what did you do?
I challenged him. I told him that the alarms are going off. The gentleman at the front is asking for the receipt. The guy pushing the shopping cart ignores him. The employee says, okay, guess not. And he just walks away. And I'm watching this just right in front of me. And I said, no, I can't. So I told him, hey man, put that stuff back. And he said he paid for it. I said, no, you didn't, because I did watch him. I followed him. I watched him load up the shopping cart with just high-end merchandise. Went through the cash register, didn't pay. The alarms are going off because of the sensors and that, that expensive merchandise. And I followed him. And I recorded it on my phone to protect myself. And I said, no, you didn't. He says, yes, sir, I did. And I said, no, you did not. I'm watching you. It's people like you that are driving the prices high because I pay for it. Okay. And he said something to the effect of, if I stole this, then I'd be taken off running. I said, you're not running because these people can't do anything. And you know this. And I said, look, you have an option right now. And by then, I was actually shouldered by another retired police officer that I used to work with. Okay, and I saw, make sure that, who's walking by me, and sure enough, it's a gentleman that I used to work with. He's retired as well. And he said, hey, I'm retired law enforcement. Police are on the way. And I gave the crook, this thief, an option. Okay, leave the basket and take off. Okay, or I'm going to follow you until wherever you're going, and I'm going to direct the police to where you are. And he just turned around, pushed the cart in my direction. I took control of the cart, and he and his girlfriend, or the female, I don't know what she was, they just went into some apartments there, near this hardware store. I returned the shopping cart back to the employee, and as I'm walking back, this line of people that were waiting to pay for the merchandise started hooting and cheering because of what they just saw.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
I'm not advocating that people do it.
Sure, yeah, but you're a trained retired police officer, so you knew the law, you know what you could do, what you couldn't do, and you stepped in and got involved. That's awesome. I've heard from some police that it's disheartening for them when they, make an arrest, go through all the paperwork that they have to go through, especially if they had to pull their firearm, and all that they have to go through and do, only to see that same person back out on the street in less than a week.
Even less than that.
Yeah.
It's less than that.
Can you speak to that?
Absolutely.
And you'll know this much more than me, but that seems like that would be a morale killer.
It is.
To the police.
Absolutely it is.
Why am I even taking the time to do this?
Can you imagine, showing up for work that day, donning your uniform, polishing your boots, wanting to do something for us, the community, right? And you get dispatched, or you deal with, let's talk about a property crime, because property crimes are out of control right now, again. Deal with the shoplifter, right? Mm-hmm. They respond, they conduct their initial investigation, they effect an arrest, right? It meets a threshold. That's even another problem, because there's thresholds now to arrest somebody, to hold them criminally responsible and book him into jail. They're working, they spent at least 2, 3, 4 hours on this one report, this case. They got to file a criminal complaint, probable cause statements, reports, booking sheets. If a vehicle's involved, the impound sheets. It's a lot of work, right? They do all this work, book the person, and by the next day, the judge releases them on the OR, which is an own recognizance. Okay. The bail system that was removed years ago, it's causing what we're going through. That's one of the major causes of our criminal justice system, having this revolving door where a crook walks in through it, it gets processed and it gets spat out. It has to change again. Now imagine that you're a police officer and you see this, right? You did a great job. You feel good about it because it is a self-gratifying profession. Very seldom will you get a POB, a pat on the back, right? It's self-gratifying because you did something. And you're cruising down the street and you see or you deal with the same person you just arrested the day before or a couple of days before. Okay. That's a kick to the stomach.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you start processing. Why? Why am I even doing this? right? I've been there, and I know a lot of my colleagues have, and they're probably still stuck there. They're probably still stuck on that. This is stupid. This is crazy, right? So, how do you fix that? How do you motivate somebody that has low morale because of what's going on, has zero drive because of that? Why? And then now we're taking tools away from law enforcement. Coverages. We're taking that away.
Yeah.
And God forbid that there's a use of force or a show of force, because that's more paperwork. Right. And if there's a use of force incident where the officer's by the book, okay, those stack up. Those stack up pretty soon. If you go hands-on and it catches the eye of an administrator, well, then now you're a problem officer, right? And it shouldn't be that way.
So my last question for you is, it's easy to talk about the problems. It's easy to tell you, and you sort of touched on this. It's easy to point out, this is bad, or this is bad, this is bad, this is a problem. And I'm limiting my question to our city of Santa Fe. Are these things fixable? Are these things that really can be improved? The end result, the property crime, the crime that you see at stores, people breaking into cars, the rampant drug use that you just see everywhere. Can we really improve this?
Absolutely. Yes. And I say that with confidence because I've been there. Okay. Santa Fe was the number one per capita for property crimes when I was a lieutenant over criminal investigations. A lot of pressure came from the politicians at that time. A lot of pressures were put on me by the leaders of the police department as the commanding officer for the criminal investigations division. And it was put on my shoulders. I was given 3 days to come up with a plan that was going to fix our property crime values. I didn't sleep the first night. And I need to say that, my livelihood was on the line.
When you were tasked with fixing that property crime issue. Yeah.
My livelihood was on the line. My rank was on the line.
You had to deliver.
I had to.
And so what did you do?
The first thing I did when I couldn't sleep, I prayed. And I prayed. And I prayed. And then all of a sudden, I started to look at the problem. The drug usage and the property crimes, they're evil twins. They go together. I knew from studying the problem was that we needed to take a massive approach. It didn't matter which of the twins we attacked, or that I attacked, but we start somewhere, right? It's metaphorically speaking, is if you have this huge forest fire and you have one water hose, well, you're not going to spray indiscriminately. You're going to start with the focal point and you're just going to keep going. And I did. I developed Operation Full Court Press. Okay. When I drafted it, I authored it, I made sure every cog in the police department was working. And that was my responsibility, to make sure that I was going to hold my subordinates accountable for their movement in this machine. Whether it be patrol, whether it be to become highly visible and start doing holding briefings out in the community, at parks, at restaurants, out in parking lots. I didn't care. It was taking the mentality that has been handed down from generation to generation in this profession and saying, we're not doing that anymore. This is what we're going to do now. Getting leaders of, business managers, and one thing that I left out purposely were the politicians that were going to bask out of my glory. I left them out. That's zero input. And when I drafted it, Eli, I reviewed it, and every cog in the police department had to work. And I held my laterals and my subordinates accountable to make sure that their cogs under their tenure would work. And it worked.
So what was the result of your management over that? So you said that Santa Fe per capita was number one in property crimes.
Right.
And so once you implemented your changes, what was the result of that?
Well, once I started implementing it, and then I started to see the numbers, and we were getting numbers, regularly, and the crime started to drop. And what you also need to, that I left out, that you need to know is that it involved the prosecution of these criminals.
Of course, it would have to.
It had to, okay? And I'll tell you, we had some resistance from the courts because of docket volumes, but it got done. And we started seeing more and more that it wasn't this huge group of people that were committing these crimes. We started to isolate, we started to stack and saying, we're starting to see a pattern here. Okay. We know the victimology, we knew who the victims were, which was these merchants, right? Different merchants, property crimes. Well, thieves that go into these stores to steal will also go and break in your car for that fix, or take your catalytic converter, or rummage through your glove box. So we started to identify, okay, now that we have the victimology done, then we started to work on the suspect viability. And then we started to identify our top offenders. And that's when we, as a department, went to the different entities, the prosecutor's office. Hey man, this guy's killing us with these burglaries. He's killing us on these shoplifting. He's killing us on, fill in the blank.
Right.
And he started to see the numbers just come down. I got us off the chart of being number one per capita in the whole United States, right? And then as our politics, my success was blooming, and my plan was blooming, and started to upset some elected officials because it was blossoming. It was being fruitful. It was producing an end result, which was no more property crimes.
Wow. Well, gosh, I think that's about all I've got for you today, Louis. Thanks for talking to me. Again, this is just kind of born out of frustration. JD and I have lives. We work. We have families. And we don't have a lot of time, but just out of frustration of just seeing how our community is just going downhill in so many ways, we've decided to make some videos about that, and certainly appreciate your input into this. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. One of the last things I want to say is this. Okay. The responsibility does not solely lie on the law enforcement shoulders. This has to be, it has to be more than that. Let me flip the coin. Okay. We as citizens can do our part, Eli. Okay. We can take, that opportunity away. Don't leave anything valuable in the car. What I normally do is my head's always in a swivel. Okay. My the precious cargo goes in the car first, and I wait and I look around to make sure that they're safe. And then I get in. When I'm at the grocery store with my wife, I'm watching to see who's watching her. I'm looking to see who's looking at that lady that's, on her cell phone, leaving her purse in the shopping cart, When they're walking out, they're walking from the exit door to their car, with their eyes looking on the ground, like, as if they're looking for pennies. We got to take away the opportunity.
Yeah.
This has to be sort of twofold. I'm not gonna put the entire weight on it in law enforcement. There's some things that we can do as a society. Let's help them. Take away the opportunity. Take away that I'm gonna break into that car and take that purse or that laptop or that backpack. Okay. And it worked. That was actually part of Operation Full Court Press, is to put up signs. We ordered signs and we gave them to merchants across town. Do not leave valuables in your car. Hide them out of sight.
Yeah.
We can do that.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. And yeah, I think it is shared responsibility. You can't have police everywhere all the time, but you can be smart.
Right.
Yeah. Louis, thank you.
You're welcome, brother.
Appreciate you. That was a good interview.
Yeah.
So now